At the end of the tutorial, under the description, I've added a link to the PDF patterns for this chair. Once I found a chair online that I liked, I found the dimensions and I made a paper pattern, which I then cut out of a fairly thin metal. I also cut out a piece of batting the same size, a piece of batting a bit smaller, and a piece of leather a bit larger. I took the smaller piece of batting and glued it onto the metal, and then I took the second piece of batting and glued it on top of that. I now have the piece of metal covered in two pieces of batting, so I took the larger piece of leather. I have pre-cut slits in it to make the folding easier and to eliminate as much bulk as I can. And then I just very gradually glued the two sides, the two ends. In between each gluing, I would clamp it for a little bit just to make it a little bit easier. If you tried to do it all at once, it would just be a more difficult job. I used tacky glue for this, and it doesn't take very long really to get a nice smooth edge, and clamping it with the little clips really helps. Then I put painter's tape on the leather so I didn't damage it with the pliers. And notice how I put the pliers very parallel to the edge. I don't want to just put them on there and bend, or I'm going to get a crooked bend. So put the plier edge parallel to the line that you want it, where you want it folded. I put the tape on the other part of the seat and repeated that process, making sure to keep that pliers near the straight edge so that I don't get a crooked bend. Take the tape off very carefully, depending on how long you let the glue dry. I try to be pretty careful with that. And now I have the basic shape of the chair that I want. It may not be balanced yet, but I can adjust that in the next step. I then took some mask nose strips. These are what we used to put on homemade masks when we were making them to keep them so you could pinch them into your nose. They're adhesive, but I don't find the adhesive to be particularly strong, so I always glue whenever I'm using them, and I use them a lot. But I take the adhesive strip off and I still use glue. I think for these I put a piece, I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but I put a piece of foil vinyl, sticky adhesive vinyl on the bottom so you didn't see the paper, but you could also just paint that. And then a little crazy glue, a little super glue. And then I cut a piece of leather smaller than my pattern, about a 1/16 of an inch. And I very gradually glued that into place on the back. I didn't want it the same size, I wanted it a tiny bit smaller so that it would fit just on the inside of that. Then, I didn't want them white, although white was nice, but I wanted them sort of a mustard color. So I took some leather dye, it was quite lemony. I just added a tiny bit of red acrylic. I didn't want to add too much. I didn't want to compromise the leather dye, but it came out perfectly. So to finish the chair off, I had this really fine Buna cord. It's a fine rubber cord. I used to use it in jewelry making 100 years ago. And it takes really well with super glue or crazy glue. It's very fine. I use a pin to put the glue on with, and I'm putting the cord, and I only do a little bit at a time, right around that seam. So on that last, when I put the last back coat layer of leather on, vinyl or whatever it was, and I put it just inside, that is the seam that I'm covering. Sorry for this video. I had to concentrate so hard on getting it in the right spot that I was losing track of where my hands were. But I mean, you get the idea. You know what I'm doing. And you just have to go really slowly. And of course, you have to be super careful not to get glue on your fingers or on the rest of the chair.